Good evening. The morning we were talking about how to move from merely an observer to a witness. How to cultivate this. The roots of all these things are in a good meditation. Well done meditation, invoking inner gratefulness towards the Master and remaining imbued with his remembrance in increasing absorbency in him, where the doership of an abhyasi is lost and somehow the impression remains in the heart that it's not me who is doing all this, but the Master. That's one way of doing it. Another approach can also be when this solidity of the heart starts melting, crossness melting away. It's like the ice melting. It starts flowing. It freely flows, and any time water that freely flows carries with it any impurities. It doesn't let even single leaf settle on its surface. It keeps on moving. With such a melting heart, witness also dissolves. Now we are embarking on a journey, not just being a witness, but even dissolving the witness himself. Now we continue the message. Remaining attached to outcomes and running behind likes and dislikes creates interference. In our relationships, the mutual interference that takes place can be extremely complex and its results are unpredictable. We cannot say what the effect will be or why. All we can say is that the observer changes the outcome and that multiple observers create complex outcomes. For instance, suppose you remember your friend and think, I wonder how they are doing. You decide to find out by paying them a surprise visit. Meanwhile, your friend is sitting at home depressed. Something has gone wrong in that person's life. You knock on the door, and when your friend opens it, a big smile appears on their face. How are you doing? You ask. Oh, I'm just great. Before you knocked on the door, they were depressed. To a certain extent, your investigation has changed their state. Your presence has cheered them up, at least superficially, but that also means you have been unable to truly assess them. As the observer, you have changed the observed, thus compromising the observation. And though you have lifted up your friend's spirits for the time being, have you solved their problem? After you leave, they may return to their previous state of depression. In that sense, your presence will have only obscured their emotional state. But what if your friend opens up and the truth comes flowing out? They make you understand everything, and as a result, you now become emotionally affected. You feel empathy, you feel sympathy. You may even feel saddened. Now, the observed person becomes a catalyst, changing the state of the observer, changing your state. Perhaps because of your compassion, because your heart is overflowing with love for the person, you now decide to advise your friend how to remedy their situation. But that advice is not welcomed. Most of the time, people do not actually take advice. Even if they do, it often creates unintended consequences. Rather than making a person happier, it often causes them to rebel and even feel negatively toward the giver. For example, you may give your friend a brilliant business idea that ends up making them a billionaire. Yet, something inside that person will always be unhappy that it came from you rather than from themselves. Therefore, Lalaji Maharaj said, never offer advice unless invited. Otherwise, it is likely to yield bad results. If you find any fault with anyone, pray for his freedom from it. Even in cases where advice is actively solicited, it is better to pause and consider before you even offer it. Misunderstanding also does not require that you say anything. What happens when you look at someone with so much love, but due to their biases, they think that your glance is negative? Observing this reaction, you feel hurt and lash out. Now you are both contributing to the deterioration of the relationship. Here, we must understand two things. The first is that we cannot predict how others will react to us, and second is that we cannot prevent their reactions. Others will always react, and we need to remember this and be understanding rather than taking it personally. But more importantly, we can withdraw ourselves from the equation altogether. This does not mean that we lead a life of solitude, but refers to instead to an inner state. Kabir's couplet isn't applicable to human relationship as it is to our relationship with the divine. As observers, we are always involved. Imagine here, for example, interference from father-in-law or mother-in-law. Many multiple observers create a chaos in a family. As observers, we are always involved. It is our likes and dislikes that draw our observation in the first place. And based on those likes and dislikes, we react, judge, and interfere. The state of observation is never passive or receptive, but good-oriented, goal-oriented. Like a tiger stalking its prey, the observing mind seeks an outcome. Observation is an imposition of action. It is a kind of violence. The observational mind can never be passive or disinterested. It cannot be a mere witness. Per contra, witnessing is passive. As a witness, you are not a participant. You are not involved. You have no interest to observe, yet you have no choice but to witness. When you witness and become a void within yourself, you will not interfere with things, and so you will not create samskaras in yourself or in others. Humility at its pinnacle creates this zeroness, this void state within, a pure, non-interfering state where you reflect only your inner absentia, not expecting or imposing anything. The witness may still experience thoughts, but does not judge them or fight with them. There may still be chaos all around, but the witness is disinterested and does not react to these inputs. To the witness, they are like the clouds and merely passes by. Who is this witness? It is not the mind. The mind is incapable of witnessing. Lord Krishna reveals this mystery in his chapter 13, verse number 22 in Bhagavad Gita. The Supreme Purusha in this body is called the witness, the one who permits, the supporter, the one who experiences the great Lord and the Supreme Self. Often when we dive deep in meditation, we have no clue where we were. We're so gone, totally gone. Yet, there is this faint idea within, someone telling, oh, you are gone, you are absorbed. Who is this entity who is observing our state of absentia or state when we were totally gone? That's the witness, that is the soul, that is the Purusha. If I too can become a witness, witnessing my own actions, intentions, thoughts, likes and dislikes, then I will also be in resonance with that inner dweller. Rather, it is that inner dweller, the soul, who witnesses. Mind consciousness creates the observer, but the consciousness of the soul creates the witness. In mind consciousness, we continue to create complexities, entertaining likes and dislikes, and deepening our samskaras. Just as the entire creation is maintained and supported by the ultimate being, the observing mind supports and maintains what Babuji refers to as our own tiny creation, complexities, likes and dislikes, desires, samskars. We feed them with our mental attention, thus empowering them. In the witness state of the soul, however, our mental power and support is automatically withdrawn. No longer are we involved with this minute creation, and so it simply withers away. Our absence now has the fragrance of self-withdrawal. Here, I'd like to point out my mistake. I have mentioned that this state is something like Uparati, but it's not Uparati. Because in a state of Uparati, there is still likes and dislikes, attraction and reversion. It's a matter of observer. So Uparati cannot be that state which is mentioned in this message. I would like you to substitute this word with mumuksatva, which Babuji has mentioned in the chapter Realization in Reality at Dawn. Mumuksatva is the final state in Sat Sampatti. Here, there is no desire for this world, not for the other world. The stage may also come when, as a result, you are so absorbed that there is no entity left behind to witness anything. This is where we started, from being to non-being. But what is before being? In Sahajmarg we call it becoming. And what is prior to becoming? Experiences, feelings before that. And what precedes feelings is thinking. So, the focused thinking, process of meditation, leads us to feeling that divinity within. Slowly, we start experiencing greater and greater bounties. This experience helps us to become, from becoming to being, and from being to non-being. The stage may also come when, as a witness, you are so absorbed that there is no entity left behind to witness anything. Having gone beyond the witness state and into the state of non-being, you somehow resonate with the original state to the extent of what is allowable by your samskaras. Here, you can reflect the condition described by Babuji as living dead. You may also move further from superficial non-being to absolute non-being, which would be the culmination of humility. From non-being comes non-action, meaning that you act without being the author of that action. Now, you simply allow things to happen as they should happen, completely absorbed in the absolute. Action is performed automatically. This is what Babuji perhaps meant when he says, establish automatism in your practice. It happens through you and yet without you. In non-being, you are in resonance with the Absolute. When we have lost all sense of our significance and are devoid of ego consciousness in any form, direct or indirect, then whatever we will do will be just what we ought to be doing. This condition, if bestowed by God, is the best of all conditions. Everyone ought to try to arrive at it. This is a quotation from Lalaji Maharaj. So he is highlighting the beauty of state of insignificance. Babuji, I have quoted earlier from 10 maxims that simplicity is the quintessence of nature. And if you can arrive at this simplicity, innocent-like state, there is nothing better than that. Perhaps what he meant by simplicity, what Lalaji means by insignificance, and what is being mentioned here as humility, perhaps they can be interchangeably used in a qualitative way, in a qualitative manner. From observer to witness to non-entity, that is the progression. It is also possible to move in the opposite trajectory. Even the disinterested witness can be subject to reversal. For example, if the witness one day finds enjoyment in a witnessed object and further develops liking and desire for it, they slip again into the observational field. This downward movement can continue even beyond the observing state, leading to a degraded condition where imposition and doership lead to a pride and even arrogance. To have pride in your acts represents a certain level of ego. But to arrogantly think that only you can perform them is to cross a new limit. To become an arrogant is the worst thing that can happen to a person. Air moves automatically from high pressure zone to a low pressure zone. For our hearts to become receptive, we would therefore need to make them into low pressure zones. Humility is the key to creating this low pressure zone in the heart, while arrogance is the sign of having a high pressure zone within. Humility will attract more noble traits in turn, while arrogance will rob us of basic humanity. Plus, the greater loss of regaining divine apotheosis. If we entertain the dream of enlightenment, can we afford to remain hiding in darkness with thoughts, actions, and attitudes that are incompatible with our goal? That would be like having a car with two engines, each powering the vehicle in an opposite direction. Where will such a vehicle go? Ultimately, we would end up in a kind of fall, where the spiritual pilgrim transforms into a slave of desires and samskars and ego, a situation in which no free will can prevail. How can free will be present in a person who has completely succumbed to their complexities? In the absence of free will, seekers find themselves completely tied up by their two legs. Yet, that does not mean that they remain stationary. Rather, they go down, pulled by the inner accumulation that they have allowed to clutter their hearts. In various religions, this downward spin would be recognized as a living in hell. Hell being the trajectory traced out by those who are too heavy to move in other manner. Humility is the cardinal quality worth cultivating. Developing it is a matter of crying your heart out to the great Master in a moment of bare truth, saying, I need your help, Master. Make me humble. Make me your true servant. Unquote. Imagine what would happen if every moment became such a moment of truth in our lives, a moment where we throw ourselves upon the holy lap of the Lord in total dependency and humility. Only when we submit in such a manner will the heart truly melt. Only then will its contents rush out, with only a vacuum remaining, a vacuum that will immediately attract divine grace. Each time we pour our heart out and create such a vacuum, which is even less than a low pressure zone, His greatness will descend again and again. That is why it is said that humility attracts so many other noble qualities in turn. With this approach, the Lord will capture your heart permanently. Then we will not have to convince ourselves through feelings, experiences, and conditions, saying, now I feel His presence. Now He resides in the heart. How? Because I no longer exist. In this game, I am nobody. When He is everything and I am nothing, where is the struggle? The riddle has been solved. When God is the absolute witness, witnessing His creation, and the Master is working as a witness, and the pilgrim is on his pilgrimage, witnessing the journey, I am sure that the path itself will become the witnessing pilgrim's destination in life. Finally, when you become Him, qualitatively like Him, who is witnessing? Whom? When you reach the pinnacle of non-being, who is the witness? Thank you for listening. We'll meet again in the evening again, just before 9. So try to be here by 8:45.